Okay, this is like take 4. I don't have scripts to these videos, so I make them on the fly. I wanted to talk about a video that I saw today, and it was talking about how technology is becoming so detrimental to today's youth, especially when it comes to their education, that it's forcing teachers to leave the profession, en masse. And it had me thinking, what were some things that I saw that I could contribute to, that statement. And also, sorry, my nose is still stuffy, so you're gonna have to bear with me. But some of the things that I saw when I was tutoring community college students, back when I was still at university, I mainly tutored math and physics. I mostly tutored math, so any math students I had who were asking for help, I would take them first, and then any physics students, I would usually leave to, 1 or 2 other tutors that we had on standby. But I did still tutor physics, just not as often as I tutored math. There were more people taking math than they were taking physics. So, but, some cases that I saw, I know now that, we're so addicted to our phones that we also have calculators on our phones, and we just rely on the calculator to do so much of our computations. I literally tutored full-grown adults who were older than me at the time, probably somewhere in the ballpark of like 5 to 10 years older than me. They could not do their basic multiplication table. They literally had to use the calculator. Now, I'm not talking about like 16 times 16. Maybe you don't know that. Fine. I'm talking about something simple like 9 times 7. Your 10 by 10 table, right? Of all the numbers, 1 through 10, multiplying together. They did not know what 9 times 7 was, as an example. And they had to use a calculator. Meanwhile, their child next to them was doing their own multiplication table. Now, I didn't say anything. I obviously did not scold the adult. I just tutored and helped them out. I let them use the calculator. But that's a case where, we're really just going off a cliff here. I get when you need to use a calculator, but the thing that I wasn't really taught or trained in this way. It was just a thought that I had. If shit goes south in any situation, I would rather know how to do something the hard way first before the easy way. Because the thing that I anticipate is whatever easy method I use to normally solve a problem will probably not be readily available in an emergency. So I should know how to do something the hard way, so that way, if everything is fucked beyond just doing something the hard way, then I am not fucked because I know the hard way. I know how to do something the hard way. For instance, we rely so much on computers. We rely so much on our calculators. What happens when the power grids go down? What happens when the calculators finally use up all the batteries, right? And we just stop producing batteries, let's say. Well, now you don't have a calculator, you don't have computers. How are you going to solve your problems? This is also why I try to continually just reteach myself some of the math and physics I learned in school. Not like every single thing I learned, but little bits here and there that continue to just keep me up to speed. So I really also think, to an extent, we've just grown complacent with having all this luxury and having all this convenience, that we've forgotten how to do things the hard way. And that is seriously fucking with our critical thinking skills as well, because we're not putting any thought into anything. Like, I've had calculus students before who didn't know how to actually do an integral. They would plug it into a website called Mathematica that would do the integral for them. And they just somehow coasted through calculus. But then when they get to calculus 2, they are fucked, because they need to know all about integration, because they're going to learn integration techniques. So they need to be comfortable doing integrals. But again, they could still use, this math software that I was talking about to solve the integrals. So, just all these luxuries and conveniences that we have has allowed for so many people to be pushed through the system that they really don't know anything. I'm not saying everyone, I'm just saying I have seen a good chunk of students who were taking calculus who had no business being in a calculus course because they didn't even understand basic algebra. Or I've had engineering physics students come to me at times and they would need to figure out, I'm thinking of an example problem. I had a student come in one time and they needed to find what is the electric field due to a uniformly charged semicircular rod. And I told them, hey, you need to do this integral. And I showed them it. They didn't understand what that integral was because what I wrote for them was a line integral. They didn't understand how to do that. But yet the prerequisite for that course was you had to take, I think, Calculus 2, where you do go over some basic line integrals. But that or Calculus 3 was one of the prereqs. But they didn't have the prerequisite. So, my point being, I've seen a lot of students who are in courses they shouldn't be in. I also had students who usually came in just for me to basically do their homework for them. When I was fresh as a tutor, within my first year, I was more willing to do that. But over time, I knew what was going on. But over time, I just developed thicker skin and just told them, hey, I'm going to do this one problem for you. The others are just like it. So just kind of follow the same procedure I did, and you'll be able to solve all the other ones, right? And they would still somehow get stuck. So, and a lot of people thought I was being mean or condescending at times whenever I tutored. There were times where, yeah, I probably was a bit condescending, but that's also because I was just so fed up with trying to explain something 10 different times in the simplest way possible, and yet somehow nothing clicks. And I don't know, there was another time when I tutored an elderly gentleman who had to at least been over twice my age at the time I was tutoring him, because he was balding and he had gray hair. So he was probably maybe like early 50s, maybe late 50s. I wouldn't say it was older than that. And I remember distinctly the first problem I helped him with. It was a very simple algebra problem. The problem was x minus 5 is equal to 0. You have this equation, so what is x? And I remember I explained it to him at first, like I showed him how to algebraically solve it. But then I told him, hey, this equation is telling you that some unknown number is being added with -5, or you're taking 5 away from some unknown number, and you have 0 as the result. So what is this unknown number? It just has to be whatever you're subtracting, so in this case, 5. He still did not understand that. Even after I showed him how to actually solve it, he tried to solve it, look at what I did, he just did not do it. He did, I don't know what he even did, I can't remember fully. He didn't do what I had done, and it was right in front of him. Mind you, this was a man who was twice my age, and I later find out that he was a pharmacist. You have to, I imagine if you're going to be a pharmacist, you need to know how to do dosage calculations, which involves a little bit of algebra. I'm genuinely concerned that there are pharmacists out there who don't know how to do those dosage calculations or don't know how to do basic algebra, because their job does require that to some extent. I don't know 100%. I'm willing to bet, though, that their job requires some basic algebra, some basic math, some basic form of arithmetic, such as dosage calculations, to make sure that whatever you're giving your client is not going to fucking kill them. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, of course. But that was kind of eye-opening for me. And the more I tutored over time, and the more adults I had coming to me for help for like math and physics, the more I just realized that our education system is critically flawed, because there are so many people who don't like. I would not say that I am special or exceptional. I would just say I know how to ask the right questions. And I know when to accept something, and I know when to reject it, and I know when to just keep it in limbo. And, I don't feel like a lot of people were ever taught just to question something. Like, I feel the reason why I am the way that I am. God, I sound fucking stupid. But the reason why I am the way that I am is I've always had trouble just accepting things. And that's also why I usually clash with authority figures. It's because I'm not going to accept something, and I'm not going to be told what to do if there is no reason to do it. I always have to question why. That is the reason why I am the way that I am, because I just have that ability to ask why. And I can continue to break down the answer that you give me until I am satisfied. That's a skill. And I feel like a lot of people need that skill to succeed, in their studies later in life. So it's like, and there were times where I was tutoring students as well, where I was intentionally being vague while still explaining what I needed to explain, but I was being vague in certain parts in the hopes that they would ask a question about that. And vast majority of the time, like 99% of the time, they never questioned what I was telling them. What's also funny is, of course, I'm not perfect. I'm a fucking human. I've made mistakes while I was tutoring people before. So I would unintentionally give them the wrong answer. However, I'm stubborn, and if I'm not 100% sure of my answer, I will go back, remember what I had actually worked, so I would just memorize the problem. I would go back, work it out either on paper or in my head, like I'll just go on a walk and figure it out. And then I would come back and tell the student, hey, I think I was wrong here. Here's what you need to do instead. That's what I usually would do when I was tutoring. There were a rare few times where I was wrong, but when I was wrong, I would come back and correct myself for the student. And that's another thing as well. I feel like there are a good chunk of teachers out there, I'm not saying all, I'm just saying some, who cannot handle being questioned or handle the fact that sometimes they're wrong. And that's okay, even if a student points it out or calls it out, just as long as they're not being condescending about it. They're just gently giving you, hey, I think it's done this way, here's why. But there are teachers out there who have a problem with that. Well, I don't. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And I would like to know why I'm wrong. Or I would explain to someone why I'm wrong. And, the funny thing is, the more I did that, the more the students trusted me over time to help them, because even though there were some times where I was wrong, they knew I had the ability to correct myself. And if they stay there for like an hour or two and I did not correct anything I had given them, they could probably leave with the confidence knowing that I gave them the right answers, and I also gave them the tools that they need to actually progress, which also made me happy. So, God. I just want my nose to finally be clear. Like, I just want to breathe through my fucking nose. But, despite the alarming things that I was seeing when I was tutoring, overall, I do love the job. I wish I still tutored, but I don't know any places that are hiring for like a full-time tutor. And honestly, if I were to do tutoring full-time, I would at least want to make what I'm making now hourly, which, is okay. It's, it's manageable if I'm living with, someone like in this case, my mother, or if I was living with a roommate, then the salary that I'm at now would be good. But I also wanted to be a teacher, but, you know, I had, I have friends who are teachers as well, and they're just telling me horror story after horror story of what's going on in schools nowadays, that I just don't feel like it's worth it. Like, it, the pay is definitely a factor because the pay is atrocious for teachers. And I'm sorry to teachers out there who are busting their asses. They're getting paid, you know, 40 to like maybe 60 grand a year. It's fucking insane. Uh, but, you know, the pay is one thing, but the lack of respect is another. And just the fact that teachers are expected to be behavioral therapists is just, it's fucking mind blowing. There are a lot of parents out there who shouldn't be parents. And we're seeing that nowadays because they don't want to parent their kids. They want the teachers to do it for them. And I know because I have had plenty of stories told to me where that was the fucking case. And I got angry for my friend who was telling me that shit. I got angry for them. That's how fucking upset I am about it. Like, I feel the fucking anger. But I'm not a teacher. I'm a former tutor. That's really it. If things change, if the industry gets better, and if teachers are actually respected again and treated fairly and paid fairly and just given the time that they need to actually be at their highest capacity, like given time off, given sick leave, given, more leniency. Because people think for some reason teachers live this life of luxury where they get the whole summer off. Bullshit. One of my friends, I have several friends who are teachers. They work over the summer. They are writing out their lessons for next year. They are planning over the summer. So they don't have as much work to do whenever they get back. You're still doing work over the summer. You also have, personal development days. You have training. You have training seminars to go to. So, and also the teachers pay for pretty much all the supplies that they need for their class. So there's that too, which ain't cheap. So, but maybe if things improve, maybe I'll try my hand at teaching. But until then, I'm just watching it burn. So, but anyway, that's my little rant, and I'll talk to you guys later.